All right, so I think everyone can see that now. First of all, we would just like to start off with saying thank you for logging on with us today. And we're really excited. We've been working on this project for a little over 6 weeks, maybe more. And we're super excited to present this information. We hope that you learned something today. As a little overview, it's just going to be an introduction to a diet approach that can help relieve the non-motor symptom of gastrointestinal distress, which all of you, I'm sure, have experienced. And we would like to start off by first introducing ourselves and then getting each of you to introduce yourself with just your name and if you want to add a little fact about yourself. So I'm Tess Queen. I'm a student, a junior at Syracuse University, and I'm studying nutrition. I hope to become a registered dietitian in the next few years. Not really sure which field I would like to go into yet, but I'm exploring my options. So that's me.
Hi, I'm Rachel Barrow. So I'm a sophomore at SU. I'm also a nutrition major, and I'm not exactly sure which field I want to go into yet because they all seem so exciting.
Hi, I'm Olivia. I'm a junior nutrition major at Syracuse. Also want to be a dietitian as a nutrition major. I was really passionate about this project as my grandma has had Parkinson's my whole life, and she's always been really interested in the connection between nutrition and how she's feeling. So since a young age, I was always like kind of incorporating food and overall health together.
Hi, my name is Felicia Showers. I'm also a nutrition major here at Syracuse. I'm actually a senior this year, so I'm excited to be graduating. Again, thank you guys all for tuning in with us today. Like Tess said, I hope you learned something. And if you wouldn't mind, if a couple of you want to kind of go around and introduce yourselves, I think that would be really cool.
We want to introduce ourselves, Pat.
How do we start? I mean, can someone call us by name or something?
Go ahead, Jerry.
I'm
Okay,
Jerry,
well-
and I'm glad I'm on this lecture here. I'm looking forward to it. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Ram.
Oh, Ram.
Yeah, Ram Kandapi. I've been diagnosed with Parkinson for 5 years now. And so far, my gastrointestinal issues are okay, normal so far. So we'll see how it goes.
Kate.
Yes, my name is Kate Griffith, and I really like to learn any natural ways to modify symptoms of Parkinson's, like
Great.
food, exercise. Yeah.
Rich.
Hi, my name is Rich Hetty and a Parkinson's patient for almost 2 years. And the more we learn about what we're dealing with, the better off we'll all be.
Good advice. Terry.
I'm Terry Toole, and I'm down in North Carolina.
Okay. Anybody else, unmute yourself and we'll call on you. Or just unmute yourself and start talking.
This is Miller and Barbara. We're up in Pompey. I've been working on trying to keep healthy since, well, for a long time. I had Parkinson's for 14 years now. I don't have any gastrointestinal issues, but that's why I'm here to learn about diet will make me healthy. Thank you.
Okay, I'll talk for Bill Haybelt. He's muted because he has a mouthful of chicken salad.
That's a good excuse.
He's had Parkinson's now for over 10 years, and he doesn't have any gastro things, but he has just about everything else. So,
Tell.
Ellen.
Okay, I couldn't tell where. I'm Ellen. I've had Parkinson's for about 10 years, I think.
And I think, and I'm just trying to find out all the things that we can help improve with. Cut.
All right, anybody else? All right, why don't we go ahead and start then?
Alrighty, thank you all for sharing. It's so nice to meet all of you, of course, through the screen. But so we're gonna go ahead and get started here. We first thank you. A lot of you filled out our survey that we sent out a few weeks ago, and our findings were that majority of you wanted to learn about nutrition education. So that's further information on digestion, constipation, fiber intake, and hydration. And the second component that was the most wanted to talk about was the how to incorporate nutrition knowledge into daily life, which we'll be talking on later. Just easy, simple things that you can do that can change your diet and better you for the future.
Okay, cool. So I know we may or may not have heard a little bit about pre and probiotics. So just a kind of quick show of hands, who's kind of familiar with pre and probiotics? Okay, cool. So some of you, but maybe not everybody. And then, so who feels like they're getting adequate fiber in their diet each day? Show of hands. Okay, again, so some of you, but maybe not everybody. So can we think of some examples? What are some examples of pre and probiotics? A cool feature of Zoom is if you want to just briefly unmute yourself, if you hit the space bar on your laptop, it'll briefly unmute yourself without having to fumble with the keys. Any examples?
Well, yogurt.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah,
common.
absolutely. Yeah, yogurt's definitely a really good one. We'll talk a little bit more about some other examples that are a little bit, easy to incorporate to the diet, and maybe some recipes that go along with that. Can anybody offer an example of maybe some fiber-rich foods?
Apples.
Apples, whole fruit, awesome.
Go ahead. How about oatmeal?
Yeah, absolutely. Oatmeal, great. Yeah, so those are a couple of really great examples. And like I said, we'll talk about a little bit more examples and some different recipes that you could potentially try to help incorporate these in your diet. Does anybody kind of know what these things do for your gut? Like what the benefits of pre and probiotics are, and maybe fiber?
Well, I think the prebiotic puts a good environment in your gut for the good bacteria to grow. And the probiotic, I think, feed the good bacteria so they keep growing.
Excellent. Excellent, Kate. Yes, thank you. Does anybody else want to talk about maybe fiber a little bit?
Helps with digestion and processing of the food you take.
Perfect. Thank you, Ron. Yeah, so we'll talk a little bit more in depth about this. And then, like I said, we'll offer some potential grocery list items to add, and then maybe some, quick combination recipes that'll help you incorporate these things just to make sure that your gastrointestinal tract is kind of moving properly and functioning properly.
Really quick, I just wanted to make sure that the Zoom is recording right now. Patrick, I don't know if you set it to record. It doesn't show on my screen. I just wanted to make sure that we have this recorded.
It looks like it is.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Okay, so moving on into our information. Thank you for all your responses. Those were great answers. Makes it a lot easier for us. And I just wanted to touch on a little statistic that is there's a prevalence of 80% of Parkinson's disease patients. GI distress is the most common, is in those people, in those patients. So some symptoms that GI distress is occurring in Parkinson's disease is constipation, which affects actually 80% of patients, and along with delayed gastric emptying, which if you're not familiar with that is, it's just holding onto your digestive contents within your stomach, and it's not pushing it into your small intestines, and it's not really letting your body digest it so that it can be passed. And that can lead to nausea, bloating, acid reflux even. And if these GI problems are not addressed, it can lead to constant issues with this. So constant constipation, constant bloating, severe abdominal pain, things like that, that makes everyday life just a little bit harder because you're uncomfortable and in a vulnerable state. So going into how increasing the pre and probiotics that we all talked about a few minutes ago with Felicia, those help improve stool consistency, so that in return decreases constipation. It reduces bloating, and it once again reduces abdominal pain. So a study done in 2011, it was one of the first clinical studies that was testing the probiotics and the effects that it had on Parkinson's disease patients. And it was a study done on individuals who a group was fed non-fermented milk, just regular milk, for 5 weeks. And then the other group was fed fermented milk for 5 weeks. And the group who was fed the fermented milk, which had probiotics growing in it, had showed stool consistency was a lot better at the end, and it reduced a lot of their bloating and abdominal pain. So bloating and abdominal pain is more subjected to the person, so they kind of answered that what they felt, and that's how they felt. They felt a lot better. And then the stool consistency was done in a lab, so I thought that was a pretty cool statistic to kind of give it some credibility. And then moving on to increasing your dietary fiber, that just helps with reducing the likelihood of your constipation. So it's just the overall gut health, and making sure that your digestive system can go through with working with the pre and probiotics that you're getting. So, yeah.
Has anyone heard of the gut-brain axis? I'm gonna just let's see if anybody raised their hand. No one's heard of it? Okay, well, this is kind of exciting.
Really, you guys?
I didn't hear the question.
Have you heard of the
Gut-brain
gut-brain
connection.
axis?
Yes.
Yes.
There you go.
I was
Okay.
going to say, I just talked to all of you about it about 3 weeks ago. So.
That's right.
Right.
For the 5th time.
So as a little summary, since some of you seem to be less familiar with it, it's basically a two-way communication between your brain and your gut. And so your gut would just be your intestines, your small intestine, and your large intestine. And as you all probably know, Parkinson's disease is a neurodegenerative condition. So that would affect the digestion of food and that communication between your brain and your gut. So the gut specifically is comprised of the gut microbiota. That can sound a little intimidating, confusing. Your gut microbiota is essentially just the healthy bacteria that helps digest your food and break down your food. So it's all good. You want that bacteria in your intestines to be able to digest that food. So in Parkinson's disease, your gut microbiota is affected through a condition known as leaky gut. So leaky gut means that that healthy bacteria that's supposed to be in your intestines is actually leaching out of your intestines, making it more difficult to digest food, causing inflammation. It's affecting that signaling with your brain. So on the next slide, we're going to talk a bit more about how to restore that gut microbiota after it has leached out. So a great way to do that is pre and probiotics. I'm sure a lot of you are pretty familiar with probiotics since they get a lot of talk. They're all in commercials and the yogurt commercials. Prebiotics are a little bit underrated. They're less talked about. So prebiotics are actually the food for probiotics. So prebiotics are a plant fiber that feed your probiotics to help make your gut microbiota thrive. So prebiotics help restore that good bacteria, help with bowel movement, restore the integrity of the intestine by fueling the probiotics. And then probiotics are actually the living bacteria, that good bacteria that is in your gut that is helping to digest all of those foods. So prebiotics are necessary to have probiotics in your intestines. So probiotics, again, they're helping move food through your intestines, increasing bowel frequency, helping prevent backup, really just making sure that you're feeling good and not getting bloated or anything like that. Do we have any questions about these right now? We're going to go more into specific foods that you could incorporate into your diet that would allow you to increase pro and prebiotics intake. Another important thing about probiotics is there's a whole bunch of different kinds of bacteria that are in your intestines. So it's important to get a variety of different probiotic food sources to make sure that you're really hitting all of those different bacteria, because it's in combination that they all work well together inside your body.
Are you going to be giving us examples of?
Yes.
Okay.
There's a whole slide with pictures and everything. It's right here on the next one, actually.
This is Barbara,
Oh, yeah.
Miller's wife.
Yeah,
Can
we
I
do.
ask a question? I was looking at your chart there with prebiotics and their benefits and probiotics. Tell me, I mean, I know yogurt and all that stuff, but what are a couple of foods or something that you would do that are called prebiotics?
So on the next slide, we have a whole list of foods that would be prebiotics, but they're typically things that you might put in your cooking before, like onions, garlic, those type of foods that you might saute before adding other things, like your aromatics.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so for a few of the common grocery items that contain prebiotics, we have garlic. So that's something that can come pre-cut if there's motor issues. So like you can buy garlic that's already pre-cut, you just add it into the pan. And we have onions, leeks, asparagus, bananas, and flax seeds.
Oh, good.
And then, so for the more aromatic ones, we have garlic, onions, and leeks. So these are easy to add just as like a spice to your recipes. They're great in soups and stews. You can saute them and eat them on your own if you want to make like just a saute of vegetables. So garlic has been found to have bacteria that prevents disease-promoting bacteria in it. So it prevents those from growing. And then for onions, they contain a fiber that helps strengthen your gut flora, and it helps boost your immune system as well as containing antioxidants. And then, of course, all of these help promote the growth of the healthy bacteria. And then, so flax seeds aren't as common, but those can be used in a lot of things. They're commonly, you can put them in a smoothie, you can top it just on some yogurt because they don't really taste like much. Or there's also like, for anybody that's vegan, you can mix it with water and it works as an egg replacement just to like thicken ingredients. So bananas and flax seeds would be great in a smoothie, top it with yogurt, maybe even add it to some ice cream. And then there's also asparagus. So asparagus has been found to also have anti-inflammatory benefits. So that asparagus, you know, you can grill, saute, bake, pan fry, just add it as a side to a meal. And then bananas have been found to also reduce bloating. And then for your probiotics, we have yogurt, which we mentioned before, miso soup, some soft cheeses, there's kimchi, kombucha, and then kefir. And then for your probiotics, you just want to make sure that when you're buying them, they're not pasteurized, because when you pasteurize them, it's going to also kill off the good bacteria too. So for the more fermented foods, we have miso soup, kombucha, and kimchi, which aren't as commonly heard of. So these can be sold individually at your grocery store. You can eat them by yourself, or you can add it to different recipes. And we're going to give you guys a packet with like all this information and also some recipes linked to send home with you guys. And then if you're feeling bored at home and you want something to do, you can also make homemade kombucha and kimchi, but it's like a project. So miso soup is full of probiotics that improve the gut health and reduce the risk of inflammatory bowel disease and other digestive problems. And then we have kimchi, which is just fermented vegetables that are super rich in probiotics that also help reduce inflammation. And then we have kombucha, which is just like a drink, and it contains fermented bacteria and yeast that also aid in digestive support. And then we have more of like the dairy-based foods. So we have the soft cheeses, the kefir, and the yogurt. So these are things that can be great on their own, or you can add your favorite topping or side. So maybe you want to do cheese and crackers, you want to do like a parfait for yogurt, or just add it at a side for a meal. So kefir is a fermented milk drink that's diverse and rich in many different probiotics, aiding in digestion and even all the way to mental health. So it's great to get a variety of different probiotics because they're all individual different bacteria that have different benefits. So if you can diversify which ones you're getting, that's even better. And then we have yogurt, which is like more of the familiar source of probiotics, which helps keep a healthy balance in your gut. And it's also been found to help tame gas, diarrhea, and other stomach issues. And then we have soft cheeses. So those are good for digestion and they contain probiotics found that are better to like endure through stomach conditions and into the intestines for better absorption, because a lot of the times when you're digesting the food, these probiotics can be lost.
Another great thing about the dairy items is that a lot of them have different textures. So if there is some degree of swallowing difficulties, we have kefir is very liquidy, up to Greek yogurt is much thicker. So there's really a wide range of textures to really accommodate to all different types of swallowing abilities.
Okay, so fiber. I know that we kind of already discussed prebiotics, and prebiotics are a type of fiber, but there are other kinds of fiber as well. And fiber, really quick, just is kind of the importance of it is it's essentially the edible parts of the plants and carbohydrate foods that are resistant to digestion. So because they're a little bit resistant to digestion, they stay in the GI tract for a little bit longer. So that helps to build the bulk that will help kind of hasten the transit through the gut and allow kind of good motility or movement through the gut of stool, etc. Fiber also helps to slow the absorption of some foods in the small intestines. So that also helps to regulate, kind of blood sugar spikes or insulin responses, and helps kind of regulate that process as well. So other foods that are good in fiber, I know before we mentioned apples, we mentioned oatmeal. So those are really great sources. So as far as whole fruit is concerned, generally whole fruit is a little bit higher in fiber because it's really the pulp or the materials of the fruit instead of the fruit juice that offers that fiber. So there's an emphasis on whole fruits. But also including, vegetables and whole grains, which also includes oats, could also include beans, peas, and lentils, nuts and nut butters, and then some whole grain cereals as well.
May I ask a question?
Yeah, absolutely.
The fruit, I didn't realize this. So if we eat the orange or the grapefruit particularly, that has that very thick lining there. Is that where the fiber is? Between the peel and the fruit? That white material in there?
That's a good question. So I know that the fiber definitely comes from there's like insoluble and soluble parts of the fruit. The more edible parts of fiber are the parts, or of fruit, excuse me, are the parts that are more resistant to digestion. And I guess I'll have to get you a better answer on grapefruit specifically, because I'm not as familiar. But that's a great question, Kate. Thank you so much. As far as recommended daily intake of fiber, I know that some of you kind of indicated that you didn't feel like you were getting the right amount of fiber per day. So it's recommended for females, it's about 25 grams per day. And for males, it's about 38 grams. And just for your reference, and I provided this table, there's a lot of words and numbers on it, but I will be linking this sheet and another little activity on the sheet that'll help you kind of estimate your own daily dietary fiber intake. So that will all be on the reference sheet that we provide to you.
Grapefruit is not recommended for Parkinson's people. It interferes.
I'm sorry?
Grapefruit interferes with Parkinson's medication. Not recommended. That's what I've read. Anybody else read that?
I haven't heard that, but you know,
Yeah.
I will research the grapefruit and kind of get that
I think-
answer back for you.
I think he's right.
I
Yeah.
read too, and you should stay away from grapefruit if you're taking Mirapex.
Right.
I'm not so sure about grapefruit, but I know with oranges, you were asking me about the white stuff that's on there. It's called pith.
Right.
So those are like the little stringies. Those do have fiber in them. I'm not sure if oranges do interfere with the Parkinson's medications. I haven't researched that specifically, but if you are able to eat oranges, eating that white stuff on them can provide a lot of fiber.
Thank you.
Thank you, Olivia. And Gerald, I'm sorry again, hadn't heard about the grapefruit interactions, but like I said, I'll definitely research that and we can provide that information, Kate, because I know you kind of asked about grapefruit. Yeah, and I know that there are some interactions with the Parkinson's medications, specifically like levodopa. And while we didn't necessarily touch on it here, I do have a great webinar that kind of addresses the protein and levodopa interaction. And so we'll be able to link that to you if you want to learn a little bit more about that. We didn't incorporate that in this because we mostly focused on GI distress. But if that's something that interests you too, we'll definitely make that resource available to you. But like I said about fiber specifically, this kind of chart is just a little bit of a reference for an example of what one serving of fiber might look like and how many grams of fiber you might get from a source of fiber foods. So if you kind of see at the chart, beans, peas, and lentils, about a half a cup is one serving, and that gets you about 8 to 10 grams of fiber. Other sources of fiber, you know, the whole grains breakfast cereals that we talked about, those have a great source of fiber. And then, you know, whole fruit, one cup of cut fruit or a medium apple, for example, that gives you about 2 grams of fiber.
The more fiber, the better, or is there a fiber overload?
Well, so there is a potential too much fiber. I mean, you know, obviously you probably heard of having too much prune juice or too much of this, you know, could potentially lead to loose stool eventually, but it's generally the average American intake of fiber is about 15 grams of fiber per day. So it's, you know, not as common for people to kind of overload, but it's definitely a good consideration.
Thank you.
But generally eating whole foods won't necessarily overload you on fiber intake. But if you are supplementing with, you know, one of those particular juices or like Metamucil or one of those other dietary things, that could potentially add a little bit more fiber than is common with whole foods. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so like we said, and we'll just kind of graze over these, we'll be linking some potential example recipes if you might want to try them at home. But just to kind of talk about these a little bit, I know Olivia mentioned, you know, the swallowing difficulties, so dysphagia or problems with that. So because of that, there's a variety of different consistencies. So you can range from a soup or a stew. It can be a little bit thicker. You can go with a smoothie, for example. But these soups and stews are great examples of recipes that you can incorporate a lot of those prebiotics too, like the aromatics and garlic and onion. But some other examples, so brown rice and garlic lemon salmon and asparagus. So that recipe that has, you know, lots of fiber and prebiotics in the brown rice. And it also has omega-3s, which are really important for cognition and brain health. And that helps to improve memory and mood, which is great. And I know that in some of our research, we found that there was potential, you know, cognitive issues, maybe memory or mood issues as well. So potentially this adding in some omega-3s would also be beneficial. Another example might be oatmeal, and oatmeal, like we said, has fiber and prebiotics, and banana and flaxseed and honey. So that's another example that has kind of all 3 of those ingredients in it as well. And like I said, we will provide you with, some easy, simple recipes that you can incorporate some of these ingredients and try for yourself at home. And then just some general wellness tips. This doesn't only talk about GI health, but it does also help with GI health. I know I don't have to advocate for you guys to exercise, right? The importance of that. Patrick's a big advocate for movement and exercise. So obviously that helps with, maintaining motor function and just general, friendliness and support with the group. But it also helps to maintain good gut health. So exercise also promotes, gut motility and smooth movement.
Did Pat send you that picture?
I actually found it online. You guys are famous.
125, Jared, that I sent.
Yeah. So Rock Steady Boxing, definitely a great activity. But it could be, walking with a friend. I know you guys have this great support group here. And then just generally, your daily movements around the house. So that might be preparing meals for yourself. That might be walking around your house or walking around your neighborhood. Etc. So then another thing is water. So hydration is really important. With increasing fiber, you definitely want to also increase your water intake because that otherwise there may be potential, and I know we talked about fiber overload. There could be potential issues if you don't also increase your your water. So the recommendations for that, and specifically for Parkinson's disease, is 6 to 8 cups of water per day. So then we also found, and this doesn't necessarily relate only to gut health, but I know for some of the motor function symptoms of Parkinson's disease, a lot of what we found also with recommendations for diet was just kind of avoiding caffeine and alcohol when possible, which is kind of sad, which is why I have a little sad face there. I know I'm a big coffee addict, but some of the recommendations were there for that. And then support. So I know that Empower Parkinson is such a great resource for all of you. It's definitely really important. And I know we're going to talk a little bit about maybe incorporating these and maybe talk about a game plan. But I know that having a support group is definitely really important for making behavior changes because sometimes it might be kind of daunting. You're like, I don't really know maybe how I want to do this. So having that support generally can be very helpful.
At least most of that's good news.
Awesome. Okay, cool. So, and really quick, I do also want to mention that reference sheet, and we can talk a little bit about what you guys also want to include, and maybe we'll come up with some ideas during this activity. But that reference sheet that we've been referencing throughout the presentation, like I said, it's going to have a little bit of recipes in it. There's also going to be a fact sheet from the American Parkinson Disease Association about constipation. That webinar that I mentioned before also that has interactions with protein and levodopa, that will also be in there. Olivia made also a really nice print piece that we would like to send to you guys as well. And then we'd like your feedback on what else maybe you might like to see on that reference sheet. So really quick, we'll just do a quick show of hands. So we'll kind of gauge where we're at. If this changed to you, like incorporating prebiotics, probiotics, and fiber, if it's super important for you, raise 2 hands. If it's somewhat important for you, just 1. And if it's not that important to you, don't raise your hands at all. Nice. Okay. Okay, so we got a lot of 2-handers. Okay, all right, awesome. Awesome. So right now, how confident do you feel in your ability to make some of these changes? Same rules, 2 if you feel super confident, 1 if you feel somewhat confident, and then none if you don't feel that confident. All right, Gerald's got the 2 hands. Okay, awesome. We got Barbara, we got Ram. Awesome. Okay, great. So for those of you who didn't have the 2 hands up, what are some reasons maybe you're not super confident? What are some things that are kind of maybe preventing you from incorporating these changes? Anybody can unmute themselves and kind of offer. I'd love this to be kind of a group discussion so we can, help everybody. If someone's feeling maybe less confident or maybe like it's a little more daunting, maybe we can kind of come up with a plan together and talk about ways that we can work around that.
I think the problem I would have is trying to measure quantities.
Measure
like,
quantities?
Yeah, like when you talk about grams or units of measure, we have no idea how to incorporate that into the daily living practice.
Okay. Okay. So, and one thing, and I can speak to this too, I know on that chart before, and we can also provide some pictures if that's beneficial. The chart offered kind of an example of maybe like one fruit, one like medium apple might be about 2 grams of fiber, for example. So something like that, would it be more beneficial if we incorporated this size amount, maybe the size of your fist, this equals maybe about 1 serving and equals 2 grams of fiber? Would that be beneficial?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, awesome. So we can definitely incorporate that. Anybody else?
Yes, smoothies are about the easiest thing to make, and they just come with these cups that are all ready to go in the refrigerator so that you can have them when you want it. The problem I have is like this miso soup and these difficult to acquire products and familiarity of recipes to use them.
Some of them don't taste good.
And some of them aren't the best flavor.
So yes, thank you. So that's a great point. I know that some of these might be a little unfamiliar. Miso soup is definitely one of those things that I personally have only ever really seen out at a restaurant. But some of the other ones, I know we can link some homemade recipes, but some of the other ones also like kimchi and kefir, those kinds of things come pre-made and are available to just buy and consume at the ready. And that's with your preference. So if it's something that you enjoy, then it's definitely an option for you. And we can definitely try our best to incorporate some recipes that are tasty and maybe some different varieties that will help incorporate those.
We will also be providing more general vegetable soup recipes, not just a miso soup, something just more generic that is maybe tastier, much easier to make, ingredients that you would find at your home that would still provide those pro and prebiotics and the fiber, but will be easier to acquire the ingredients and will probably tailor to your palate a little bit better.
Any other concerns potentially?
Do you guys practice this diet in your own lives?
So I definitely focus a lot on fiber, just because I think that in general, having a well-balanced, more holistic diet helps keep things regular, instead of having to use medications. I personally would rather use food as medicine. So we hoped that maybe this would be something that you're interested in as well. So probiotics and prebiotics, I definitely do try to incorporate in my gut. There's a few other things too that we can talk about as well.
Add on to that, I also definitely follow this diet. I'm a vegetarian, so I eat lots of fiber-rich foods. So I would say that we are also following this diet and know that it's easy enough to incorporate, and we have some good tricks and recipes that we can provide to you.
Yep, I can agree with that. And I think it goes into almost knowing I didn't really know that I was even following a pre and probiotic and dietary fiber diet, but more I was trying to eat foods that I thought was good for me, more like a whole food diet. So I think it's interesting that a lot of the foods that we can incorporate easily, I mean, we're all college students and we don't have the most experience with cooking on our own before we went to college. So I think that's important to note that we have some tricks and tips that we can help with making it a little bit easier for the recipes and such.
And going along with both of them, I'm also vegan, so I focus a lot on whole foods too, just eating like natural fruits and vegetables, less processed stuff.
How does the Mediterranean diet square with this, what you're talking about here and recommending?
So the Mediterranean diet is great. So I know I mentioned before the omega-3s. Omega-3s come from, you know, things like salmon or other fish. So those are really emphasized in the Mediterranean diet. And there's also a large emphasis on whole foods, raw foods, lots of fruits and vegetables, as well as, you know, some whole grains, and then also lentils and beans. So lots of those provide you know, lots of high fiber in your diet. And a lot of those are surprisingly prebiotics as well. So we'll include, on top of this presentation and everything, we'll include a list of a lot of different pre and probiotics. Even, you know, we kind of just provided a small sample list, but you'd be surprised by how many you might find that you might already eat, which is great. And it might just be as much as, you know, incorporating small substitutions. So it may not be as daunting as it seems.
Thank you.
How does the color of the vegetables affect the nutritional value? Any idea?
Yeah, so different colored vegetables have different phytochemicals or antioxidants that are beneficial for lots of different aspects in health. So depending on the color of it, you know, it could offer a different beneficial health benefit, for lack of a better term.
It's a general rule of thumb to incorporate as many colors as you can when you're preparing food. So maybe, or just throughout the day, maybe something green, something purple, maybe eggplant, something green, or I'm sorry, orange red, so carrots, tomatoes. It's really just nice to see a wide assortment of colors in what you're eating to make sure that you're hitting all of those vitamins and minerals and nutrients in your diet. And that will also provide you with lots of pro and prebiotics and a lot of fiber as well.
Thank you.
You mentioned flax seeds. Is it equally good to have the ground up flax seed, like in a powder form? Or
So
just,
yeah, you can have either form.
okay. I mean, you don't need the outside of the seed to have the fiber? Or?
That should normally be ground up when they're ground up. So that'll be incorporated.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and like Rachel was saying, a lot of those, the ground flaxseed, and you might find those combined with maybe chia seeds or other things like that. Having those combined, it's the outside of the seed that is actually like the bran that contains the fiber. So yeah, so you do want it to have that, but usually when it's ground up, it will still be incorporated. It'll just be in a different consistency. So I know personally, when I have flax seeds, I like to maybe sprinkle them on top of peanut butter toast with honey, which is just kind of a nice little texture. And you can add them on top of a salad too for another little kind of texture. But you can also kind of have the powder ground up and maybe add it to a smoothie. So that smoother consistency, you know, kind of blends a little bit better in, say, like a banana smoothie with yogurt or something. Does that help?
Ground flax seeds also mix
Yes.
really well in oatmeal. You probably won't even taste the texture in there because oatmeal is already kind of mushy and like all blends together well. So that would be a great spot to add them in as well.
Awesome. Do we have any other questions right now? No? So another check-in. We'll do this activity again. Now that we've kind of talked about it a little bit and made a little bit of a game plan, let's re-gauge that level of confidence. So again, we'll go 2 hands is super confident, 1 hand is somewhat confident, and then no hands is not that confident. Gerald, loving the confidence. That's right. Awesome. Awesome. Kate, got it. Don, got it. Awesome. Cool. That makes me really happy.
It does help to have a wife who does all these things, your partner.
Yes, that's definitely helpful. Awesome. Thank you guys for your participation.
So we really hope you guys all enjoyed this presentation. Thank you for giving us your time and allowing us to present this information to you guys. We hope you learned something and you enjoyed what we, even if it wasn't like necessarily for you, but you still enjoyed learning the material. So we're going to send an email out to Patrick with the reference sheet and the pamphlets and everything we talked about. Hopefully we'll get that to you by Monday. We'll send that out to him and then he can send it out to all of you guys. And then we are going to do one more survey, and we'd really appreciate it if you guys could take that survey just so we can get our feedback from you guys on what you liked about the presentation, maybe what you would change, anything like that. And that helps us know moving on to the future what we should do.
Aaron, I see you have your hand raised. Did you have a question?
No, I don't
Okay.
know how to raise my hand on the
Oh,
doesn't
okay.
give me
Oh, from the previous activity. Just wanted to
Yeah,
make sure that we get all the questions answered. And if anybody else has any more questions, we can take them right now as well.
I do have, my only questions were about, Ram mentioned some of that, about how much mine is regarding protein, because I think some of it's, I eat maybe too much protein at the time, around the time I take my medicine. And because sometimes I feel that the medicine isn't even working, that I didn't even take a dose of it. And they say to take your proteins later at night because of that. But I struggle, like with Ram, how much protein do we need and how much is that in a piece of meat or some tuna fish or whatever? I struggle with that, knowing how much I should be eating.
So a general rule of thumb with proteins is, I'm not sure if you guys have smartphones. If not, you can use your hand. The size of your palm or the size of the screen of your phone is about 1 serving of a protein. So 1 serving of fish, 1 serving of chicken, whatever protein you may choose. So that is like a general rule of thumb, especially because American portions of proteins can get pretty large, especially when you're going out to eat. As often as Americans, we are consuming way more protein than we actually need in the diet. I feel like there's kind of a big protein push, but generally about the size of your hand or a phone screen is 1 serving.
And Karen too, I will add, I know I briefly saw this in our research. I know I mentioned before the interaction with protein and levodopa because they kind of compete together in the gut. So specifically with levodopa, I know that I saw the recommendations were to take it before taking protein. So the recommendations were like, and I'm sure, it's definitely important to follow however your doctor prescribed your medication, but a lot of the research I saw said it recommended taking it 30 to 60 minutes before consuming protein, just to allow it to kind of make its way through the gut. And like I said, I will link that webinar, and I watched it. It's only about 54 minutes long, but there's some really great information in there specific to Parkinson's disease and the diet, and it does touch on protein and levodopa interactions.
Okay, thank you.
Does that help?
Yes, that helps a lot. Thank you very much. I'll look forward to that.
Gerald, it looks like you were going to say something too. What?
I've read the same thing you're talking about, that you watch your medication and it does interfere with your protein. If you take protein a half an hour before or an hour after, so you wait a half an hour before, don't take any protein, and an hour after, don't take any protein, and then you'll be okay with your medication.
Yeah, thank you, Gerald. And yeah, like I said, Karen, we'll just make sure that we link that webinar so that, and it is from the American Parkinson's Disease Association. They have a lot of great webinars that I realized they have linked right on their website. And some of them are gauged to, general wellness. And this one specifically talks about nutrition. So we'll make that available to you.
Those of you that are vegetarians or vegan, where do you get your protein from mainly?
I usually eat a lot of tofu, tempeh. I also have yogurt. So I still eat dairy products, yogurt and eggs. I do eat a lot of peanut butter. It is one of my favorite foods.
Yeah, mine too.
And I can also throw in a bunch, if I have a smoothie, I can throw in a bunch of different proteins in there. You could do peanut butter, what have you. Also, vegetables do have protein. People forget about that, but a lot of vegetables do still have protein in them, especially edamame. Even green peas have a lot of protein in them, which is, people really forget about that when it's kind of not known that peas have protein. I also really like beans and hummus, chickpeas, all of those type of foods. Rachel, I didn't know if you wanted to add anything.
I was going to say and lentils too, but that's basically what I eat too. Everything she just said.
And quinoa, isn't that?
Oh, quinoa. Also, even just rice and pasta has protein in it, which is nice, especially if you just want to have just an easy bowl of pasta with red sauce. Keep it simple. That'll have protein in there.
And meat is normally highlighted because it contains like a lot more protein, but when you're eating all these things that contain a little bit throughout the day, that all adds up to what you need in the day.
So Kate, I do also want to just comment. I know you mentioned quinoa. Awesome. I love quinoa. It's a superfood, and a lot of people don't know. I know that, people say, oh, you need to get more protein from meat because they're complete sources of protein. And then some people say, obviously the vegetable sources of protein are not complete. What's interesting about quinoa is that it actually is a complete protein. Just like meat products. So it has, whole grains in it, which has lots of fiber, and it also has protein. So awesome on you for mentioning that one. I love quinoa.
Do we have any other final questions?
Great job.
Thank you.
Thank you. It was a very good presentation.
This here is our reference sheet. So we did come in with information. We didn't just pull it out of our heads. These are sources that we used.
Thank you guys so much for your participation. This was a lot more fun with you guys kind of interacting with us. And like we said, we wanted you guys